disappointed, frustrated are the only words that come to my mind to describe the events that took place this past weekend. Frankly speaking, I wish it was only a bad nightmare. It's deja vu 2002 all over again for Muslims, not only in the US, but frankly speaking, all over the globe. And as much as Sean Spicer, the White House press secretary, or General Kelly, the head of the Department of Homeland Security, may say that this is simply a travel ban, that it definitely is not. And you know what? I'm not going to talk about the legal verbiage in the executive order. I'm just going to quote a close confidant of, well, I can't say President Trump, Mr. Trump, ex-mayor of New York City, Rudy Giuliani. He simply said, you know what? I got a call from Mr. Trump. He said, what is the legal way of instituting a Muslim ban? He wanted to deliver on a campaign promise. And this was the only promise that he wanted to deliver upon. Well, let's forget. All right, so this is a Muslim ban. We know it is, right? So there's no point in wasting time discussing the legality of it, discussing whether it is or not. The second question comes, why the quick enforcement? Why the bungled enforcement? Why the mass hysteria all over the airports? No one knew what Mr. Trump tweeted the night before. Right? I mean, literally, there was total chaos in every airport of our country. The question is, why? Well, of course, all foreign policy affairs nowadays are handled by Twitter. So, President Trump tweeted sometime in the morning, late morning or early night, whatever, we need to keep the bad dudes out. Right? These bad dudes are coming to our homeland. We need to defend ourselves. Well, Mr. Trump, unfortunately, you do have access to the internet because you tweeted, right? Why did you not do some research? The question is, Mr. Trump, you need to figure this out. Of these 7 countries that you identified in the Muslim ban, according to a conservative institute, the Cato Institute, not a single citizen of those countries has been involved in an act of terrorism on our soil since 1975. And had Mr. Trump read that study, his list would have been more inclusive. I mean, really speaking, there are countries in the Muslim world that really deserve to be on that list. No, seriously, there is. There is a problem, right? Of course, the first name that comes to mind is the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. There is Saudi Arabia, there is UAE, and there is Qatar. In the same study, all these 3 countries combined have been involved in 3,000 acts of violence on our soil. Of course, 2,300 go to Saudi Arabia. So the question is, why these 7 countries? Well, of course, Mr. Trump had to defend, and of course, his defense comes on Twitter. He basically said, according to Trump, these 7 countries were included on this list because they had strong ties to terrorism. And as much as I despise Mr. Trump, and as much as I despise his foreign policy, I have to admit, he was right. These 7 countries have strong ties to terrorism. They have been terrorized by the U.S. military-industrial complex. List is the country of Libya. Libya was attacked by NATO, backed by our government. Do we know to this day why a sovereign nation was bombarded? Why the leader country was deposed? Why was he killed by an angry mob? The only answer that we get, or the only statement that we get, is from then Secretary Hillary Clinton, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, when she said, "We came, we saw, he died." Never was the question raised why we came, why we saw, and why did he die. The next country, and we're very familiar with this one, is Iraq. We basically attacked a foreign land. Saddam was no saint, no doubt about that. But we attacked Iraq because we thought there were weapons of mass destruction there. Well, we all found out that as every leader has an ego and so forth, Saddam was all talk. But what that attack has resulted in is total chaos in a country. ISIS freely roamed around the streets of Iraq for a good 15 years now. The next country is Syria. Syria, unfortunately, the conflict in Syria transpired at a time where our deficits were really high. We could not afford to put boots on the ground. But of course, our foreign policy has a thirst for regime change. So what did we do? We came out with this notion of the good Taliban and the bad Taliban. And we decided to fund the good Taliban. Well, the good Taliban was basically ISIS. We funded ISIS in Syria. We extended this conflict for 6 years. These refugees that Donald Trump has banned is because of our faulty foreign policy. Folks, the next country is Yemen. Of course, there's 7 countries, but I'm going to go over 5. I've already gone through 4. Yemen. Why is Yemen on this list? I mean, really, you got to ask this question. Why is Yemen there? Well, I'll tell you the answer. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has been dropping bombs on Yemen for the last 3 years. The question is why? Well, there's a popular uprising in Yemen led by the Houthi tribe, who has an ideology that does not match Saudi Arabia's. So you know what they do? They bomb a sovereign country. Guess what? We support them. The last on the list that I'm going to cover, because the other two, Sudan and Somalia, unfortunately, I think the only reason why they were included on the list is because there's not a Trump hotel there. But the last on the list is Iran. And Iran is really, it's really amazing why Iran is on the list. Forget about the history. Forget about the history between U.S. and Iran. But as of today, the only reason why we've been able to bring our men back home is because Iran is fighting the war of terrorism for us there. Iran is the only reason why we're able to bring our forces back home at the same time defeat ISIS. ISIS has been restricted in the Middle East. But of course, President Trump, or Mr. Trump, what does he do? He puts Iran on the list. He calls King Salman of Saudi Arabia this weekend, and he asks him for advice how to create free zones in the Middle East. This is our foreign policy. And I'm an American. I am an American. Unfortunately, it disappoints me why our foreign policy is so faulty. But folks, the point of talking about all these countries is to emphasize one real point. Whatever I have mentioned has transpired over 16 years. 16 years is when we had a Republican government, we had a Democratic government for 8 years, and we had a Republican government for 8 years. Either way, the result is the same. Our foreign policy has a thirst for regime change. And what does regime change result in? It results in what we're trying to stop today. A byproduct of regime change are refugees. And that is the real problem, my friends. That is exactly the problem. The difference between the Democratic foreign policy and the Republican foreign policy is the Democrats keep the Muslims and safe. But they bomb Muslims in foreign lands. Whereas Republicans are all about targeting Muslims in the homeland, in addition to the foreign lands as well. They're one step further. But you know what? I'm sure you're all disappointed. And my point was not to disappoint you or frustrate you or whatnot. We're all in this together. We are all in this together. Believe me, we are all minorities. But there is hope. There is hope because there are people of conscience. This past weekend, what Trump did has unified us. It has also given us hope. There is hope because when Trump signed that executive order, there was a U.S. District Court Judge, Ann Donnelly, who put a stay on it. It was because of her actions that at least green card holders who were stranded on our airports after going through a rigorous process that spanned multiple years were allowed to return to their homes. Another person that gives me hope was Attorney General Sally Yates. Sally Yates, instead of enacting on Trump's orders, basically denied to do so. And it resulted in her ultimate dismissal. And that too of Ms. Donnelly as well. The whole point, my friends, we definitely have minorities here. And they're being attacked from the establishment. But we are people of conscience. There is no doubt people of conscience are here. We saw that in our airports. We saw 40,000 people descend on JFK. We saw 5,000 people descend on O'Hare in Chicago. This is a resistance. This is exactly what we need to do. We need to fight for all minorities. Because if you look at it, the only difference between my oppression and everyone else's oppression is that my oppression is openly being displayed. In the words of Jack Ma, the CEO of Alibaba, he made a very interesting point the other day. We have problems here. Do we not? Do we not? I mean, if we're not a minority, we're all minority when it comes to the financial sense, right? I mean, the Dow is at 20,000 right now. How many of us are driving Bentleys? Are we? A lot of us really are struggling to pay our day-to-day expenses. So the question is, we need to send a message to the establishment. And the establishment includes both Democrats and Republicans. We need to organize. We need to unite. We are people of conscience. We are Americans. And we live in a country who was founded on the principle of liberty and justice for all. It's now time that we fight for everyone's freedom and everyone's right to justice. Thank you.